You've heard what I'm about to say before. Skyrim's main quest sucks. In fact, all of its quests suck, its combat system sucks, and it even sucked by the standards of combat systems in 2011. Its inventory management system sucks, its magic system sucks, its NPC AI sucks. Skyrim's story sucks. I mean, I do like that the main quest directs you to visit so many places, but the plot itself is pretty boring. Its story isn't really about anything, and it just feels like, what if you took a bunch of, industry standard fantasy elements and you threw them in a blender, and that blender just sort of blended out a McDonald's cheeseburger. Skyrim has Radiant quests in it, and I can't really tell the difference between what's a Radiant quest and what's a designed quest, because the design quests are so bad that they're indistinguishable from what a computer would just generate. The story isn't about anything. Its Civil War plot sucks because it's also not about anything. Despite having such a robust list of named NPCs, Skyrim doesn't have any characters in it, except maybe for Paarthurnax. And yeah, look, I pronounce his name Paarthurnax because it's got those two A's in it, and those two A's, you put two A's in a word like that because it signifies an elongated vowel sound. So it's not par, it's not one syllable par, it's pa-ar, two syllables, Paarthurnax. Paarthurnax seems like the only guy in this whole world who has any character motivation or any capacity for introspection. I think he's the only guy who thinks about anything at all. Paarthurnax just barely feels like a guy who lives in this world and is responding to the world as it exists, while everyone else just feels like exhausted employees at a theme park who can just barely pretend to be in character. Skyrim has dragon fights in it, and the dragon fights suck. I keep downloading mods to turn the dragons off, but none of them ever seem to work, so what I usually do is, a dragon will show up, and I'll just open up the console and delete the dragon. Just get him out of here, you know? And that's not really something you want people to say about your dragon fighting game that's main marketing appeal is the dragon fights in it. So if all these aspects of Skyrim suck, why do I keep playing it? I keep booting it up and playing it. And look, I don't think that Skyrim is bad. I think it's mediocre. And the source of that mediocrity is its contrast of good content and bad content. It's interesting to see where Bethesda put in a lot of effort and where they didn't. And Skyrim is good enough that I get this strange itch to boot up my PC and start a new playthrough every now and again. And Skyrim is bad enough that I will eventually abandon that playthrough. The game has supreme diminishing returns. I've actually managed to only complete the main quest of Skyrim exactly once now that I think about it, and that was back in 2011 when the game first came out. I've only completed the Civil War quest once, and now in my replays, I just flat out don't engage with it. I just never start this quest. I've never played Dawnguard or Dragonborn, even though I've been meaning to for 15 years now, and I ain't never gonna play Hearthfire. So why do I keep returning to Skyrim? You've heard what I'm about to say before. Skyrim's world space is just beautiful. It's beautiful even now. It turns out art direction is a lot more important than graphical fidelity, and so I think this game looks really good, and it still looks really good. It's a joy to just exist in this place. I love to just walk around this world and explore. I love coming across this monument and wondering who this person was and what they did to get a monument. I love the walk to Ivarstead with this big, beautiful waterfall. I love the way the sun rises over the mountains, and I love all these little touches and attentions to detail in the game's world that really sort of sell it as a place, that give that world that really great sense of atmosphere. I love that the butterflies flutter away from you if you approach them. I can't bring myself to collect them. I love buying a house in Whiterun and cooking soup. I love walking to places, and I don't fast travel. I will literally walk everywhere. On occasion, I'll employ these carts to travel between holds, and I also like purchasing a horse to horse through places I've already explored, but I love traveling. I love all these road signs. I love the very obvious care the team put into crafting this intricate, beautiful world space that is still so beautiful so many years later. And even though current games are working with vastly more technology, there just aren't as many worlds I like to explore as much as Skyrim's, which is why I'm so disappointed that there just isn't really anything to find here. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of numerical stuff. It's just that finding that stuff isn't usually very interesting or meaningful. Like, you know, you traverse one dragger-infested burial mound, you traverse them all, and there's so many. What endlessly fascinates me about Bethesda's turnout in general is that their games like Skyrim and Fallout 3 and 4, like, they're great games, or at least they're great proofs of concept. Like, all of these games, they all feel like really, really great, promising proofs of concept. They're like a foundation for a great game that is trapped inside of this other game that is at best mid and is at worst terrible. These places are beautiful, but they always end up failing to feel like places. They feel like theme parks, you know? It's like you feel like if you lean against the wall too hard, like the set's gonna collapse and the spell will be broken. You know, these places feel like a movie set more than a place most of the time. And I think a big part of that are these NPCs. Like, they don't feel like people. They don't feel like characters. They feel like C-movie actors role-playing as background characters in The Lord of the Rings. And it's just like, I'll play this game for like 20 hours, and every time I feel myself just about to get lost in it, there's something that just snaps me right out of it. And it's like, you know, the game doesn't feel like a place that exists independently. It feels like everything is, like the game knows that you're not a person, you're a player, and you have come to visit this world and run around in it and set everybody on fire. And so, like, there's things in here that are just like, that's stuff for the player to find, but it doesn't have anything to do with, like, the universe itself, what it's in. Like, for example, there's this magic rock near Riften that if you touch it, you gain the mystical ability to turn invisible once per day. And that's just like, oh god. You know, there's so many implications with that in this world, man. Like imagine if next to the 7-Eleven down the street from where you live, there was a rock, and if you could touch it, it would just turn you invisible once per day, like whenever you wanted. And like, it's not interested in what your qualifications are or like what your reasons for wanting to do so is. It's just, if you touch the rock, you can turn invisible. And it's just like, think about the kind of ridiculousness people would get up to, like in our universe, and then what they would get up to in this universe. You know, like the nearby town of Riften is like famously the Thieves Guild city. So like, this rock should be guarded at all times and kept under lock and key. Like, Riften's main keep should be built around this rock in order to keep it off the, like, out of the hands of the riffraff, you know? Because if I was a poverty-stricken, like tavern drunk in Riften, I would go touch the invisible rock and then I'd rob the rich people. Like, there's an invisible rock and it's just like right here. Like, the entirety of the Thieves Guild storyline should center around this rock and who gets to get access to it. And, like, you know, if you don't fast travel like I do, you sort of get jumped by thieves, like, all the time. And they just, like, run out of the brush and ambush you. And, like, dude, like, I always want to be like, dude, okay, look, listen, this is clearly your first and
it's gonna be your last
robbery. But there's a rock over by Riften, and you can just touch. And if you touch it, it'll turn you invisible. And that'll make your day job of robbing people easier. Like, why is nobody utilizing this magic invisibility rock? You know, and I just constantly am reminded that this is like a game that has like creature spawn points in it. You know, it features all these beautiful landscapes that the team spent like however many amount of years making, and I'm trying to like ride my horse and just like soak in the atmosphere, but you never really get the chance to just like chill out and appreciate them, because the game spawns wolves and bears and saber-toothed tigers and dragons like every 30 seconds to ambush you. Like, I'm trying to get lost in your world, Skyrim, and now all I'm thinking about is whoever poor sucker's job it was to place all these spawn points everywhere, and there's just so many. And, like, when I'm on my horse and, like, a saber-toothed tiger runs out of the wilderness or whatever, I just, like, keep going. I just, like, ride right past them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to fight anybody. And it's, like, I don't need all these, like, wolf pelts, you know? And again, like, whenever dragons show up, I open up the console commands and I delete them, because they're no fun to fight. Perhaps the most interesting system that Skyrim has are these dragon shouts. And what I think is really cool about the dragon shouts is that they exist within an in-universe draconic language. Like, the dragons literally shout magic into existence, and I think that's really cool. And I think that, like, in-universe languages are really cool, and I love it when I get the opportunity to kind of study a fictional universe like it's a real place, you know what I mean? And video games with their secondary worlds are extraordinarily adept at this kind of thing, and it's the most interesting in this kind of thing because you're literally walking around the world in universe, you know what I mean? And like, the dragon language gets used in this rock solid theme song that plays over the main menu. And the opening lines of this song read, Dovahking, Nalok Zinlos Varin, Wadain Vokul Ma Ferak Astval, which is translated as Dragonborn, by his honor is sworn, to keep evil forever at bay. And it's like, at bay? Dude, at bay is a naval reference. You keep enemy ships at bay to prevent them from landing troops on the shore. Which, you know, fun fact, ships can't go on land. Like, the English language is actually inundated with tons of these, like, little naval phrases of yesteryear. Given that navies were so integral to Great Britain and British culture for, like, a couple hundred years there. Language is interesting because, like, the history of the place that language originated is, like, written into the words people speak. Like with the Navy example. The history of our world is written into the English language in a way that you can facsimilate with the dragon language. Dragons, I suspect, have little use for navies, so I find it unlikely that they would develop the exact same phrase in their draconic language as we did in English. And, you know, you could say maybe this is just like a translation quirk. After all, like, for example, if you're some kind of weirdo who's going to commit a couple hundred hours of their finite life to brute force learning Japanese so you can play your dumb favorite video game Final Fantasy VII in its original language, you'll run into the character Barrett saying, which is translated into English as
"Don't let your guard down."
Right. And "don't let your guard down" communicates approximately the same sentiment as "yudan wa kinmotsu daze," though "yudan wa kinmotsu daze" literally means carelessness is a forbidden item. So perhaps, you know, like, Ostval just communicates the same sentiment as at bay, in the same way that carelessness is a forbidden item communicates the same sentiment as "don't let your guard down." Except, when you look it up, oxt literally is the auxiliary at, and val literally means bay. You know, it's like you missed an opportunity to make these dragons even more interesting and feel more like dragons that are of this world. Or, like, you know, if you look at the fire dragon shout, the second word in it is inferno, which, like, inferno is a loan word from Italian, and more specifically, it's what Dante called hell. So, like, is there a dragon concept of hell that they call inferno? Are dragons afraid to go to hell? And it's like, in this world, the afterlife is provably real, and there ain't, like, nowhere that's called hell. Also, I love in the Molag Bal mission where you bring this guy to the cage, and it's like you beat him, and you only beat him to death twice before he's like, "I submit." And then it's like, dude, like, this guy runs hell. And so, like, you pledge yourself to him and you die. Like, what do you think is immediately going to start happening to you when you show up in hell, where you know for sure that that's where you're going to be forever? It's wild. It's a wild place to be asked to take seriously. Or for, like, example, there's this guy named Ingvar in Markarth. Ingvar means protected by Yngvi. Yngvi being an actual Norse god who's probably also Freyr. Freyr means lord, so we're not actually sure if Freyr is this guy's name or just his title. There's actually an incredibly similar story with Freya. Freya is just a feminized version of Freyr. Because Freya is also Vanadis and also Frigga. Vanadis means goddess of the Vanir, so it might just also be a title. And Frigga means beloved, and it might just be a pet name that Odin has for her. So much of Norse mythology is lost, and we have so many gaps in, like, our understanding of Norse mythology. It's crazy. Four out of the 5 days of the week are actually named after Norse gods, by the way. So, like, does Ingvi exist in this universe, or am I supposed to just assume that Ingvar has a different in-universe etymology? The answer, of course, is that there is no answer. Nobody at Bethesda paid attention to this sort of thing. They just compiled a list of real-life Nordic names for their in-universe Nords as part of Skyrim's aesthetic. Skyrim being, of course, a fantasy Scandinavia written by people who perhaps read half of the Wikipedia article on Vikings. Beyond that, aesthetic is nothing. And, like, the aesthetic is great, but also, like, you gotta have something behind your aesthetic. Like, imagine if you sat down to eat a delicious hamburger and it looks really great, and then when you take a bite out of it, it tastes like nothing. That's kind of what Skyrim feels like. And it's like, just, you don't know. I don't know. I'm baffled by this stuff, because it's like, why would you so flagrantly showcase such a disinterest in, like, knowing things about your own constructed world and putting things in there for me to think about? Do you not want me to think about this place that you spent so long creating? Do you not want me to think about it? And, you know, maybe I'm just overthinking it, but from my own experience, it's really you underthinkers who keep ruining everything. But also, like, why would the game's makers spend so much time crafting this world space if they didn't want me to think about it? And why would you, person accusing me of overthinking, spend so many hours of your life exploring this world space if you think it's dumb to spend any amount of time at all thinking about it? I guess the main thing that baffles me about Skyrim and about Bethesda projects in general is this palpable contrast between high effort content and low effort content. Like, why would you spend so much time painstakingly crafting this beautiful world just to not really put anything interesting in it, you know? And that's why I say Skyrim doesn't live up to its own world space.